All right. Welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Buck What You Heard. And I'm starting off my NFC South tour with a very special guest of mine, Bob Rose. He's a writer and you write for SI or who all do you, and let me start because there's so much you do. I think I don't want to miss anything. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Because tonight we're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints. That's one of the teams that we will be facing twice this year. So it's good to get to know what they're doing right now in the offseason.
Gene, and I thank you so much for having me on. I talk back and forth a lot during, a lot, especially recently. So it's such a pleasure to be joining you. For the last few years, I've been writing for the New Orleans Saints as a contributing writer for the Canal Street Chronicles. And then last year, about a quarter of the way into the season, I joined the Saints News Network and SI.com. Certainly a couple of big names as well as SB Nation and Canal Street. And then about 2 months ago, I decided to make the jump to Sports Illustrated and the Saints News Network full time. Still an official member of Canal Street Chronicles, and I contribute when I can over there. Those guys put out some great work too. And then through Saints News Network as well, although things have been a little bit crazy recently, we do a weekly podcast called the Bayou Blitz. We've been producing that a little bit more inconsistently than we'd like because we've just had to concentrate so much on the writings with everything going on throughout the NFL, especially this time of year. So yeah, you're right. I keep myself pretty busy, but other than putting on a helmet myself, this is a dream come true, man.
Man, yeah, you got to, you know what? If you do something you love, you don't work a day in your life. So it's great that you get to be able to do that. This has been an unprecedented offseason. When you look at the level of talent in free agency that's been available, from the quarterback to on down the line, different players that have been available and the depth of players that have been available. We haven't seen anything like this that I can think of in my following of the NFL. How about you?
No, I agree with that. So many big names out there, veterans that you thought would never, ever, ever leave their team are joining other teams. You guys can definitely attest to that one. Top talent, jumping teams in their prime. The type of players that you never really thought their current franchises would let them hit the free agent market. All of a sudden they're floating out there and joining different teams. It is unprecedented. I would fully expect a mini power shift throughout the NFL within the next year or two because of this type of movement.
Yeah, and just shout out to everybody. I hope everybody is being safe. This and again, this is we're in uncharted waters with what's going on, with this pandemic with everybody. And I hope everybody is being safe and, you and your loved ones are all being safe out there too. Kind of shifting back to football. It's kind of a unique situation because normally you would have OTAs and then you would have the draft and then you would have your different camps as you prepare for the season. And, with the way things are right now, you just don't know what's going to happen moving forward. And again, I just, when I think about this, I can't think of any other time. I think the closest thing I can probably come to is maybe 9/11, maybe. But even that wasn't on the level of what we're experiencing right now.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you are going to see a lot of teams negatively affected by this lockdown. You mentioned OTAs all but officially being canceled. Same with going to be June mini camps. We don't know what's going to happen with training camp yet. The NFL is quite clearly trying not to jump to any decisions before they have to make them. But what we're going to see with these off-season programs basically not taking place at the team facilities with your teammates, the new players, draft choices, and new coaching regimes, they're not going to have a chance to get on the same page in the same way that we've seen teams and players being able to do before. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to affect all this player movement or new coaches that have been hired by teams, not only head coaches, but offensive and defensive coordinators as well. They like to bring in their own systems, and rightfully so. Well, these players and these staffs, they can't get on the same page with each other the same way they've been able to in the past. That's an underrated aspect of some of the changes that we're going to see this upcoming season.
Yeah, you know what? I'm right there with you. I just when you think about like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers they have Tom Brady. Tom Brady has not gotten a chance to work out with his receivers or his tight ends or any of that. Uh, it's gonna be crazy just to see how that all comes together. The Carolina Panthers, they have a new quarterback, they have a new head coach, and they've got a pretty much a new system. And I think that's kind of where I wanted to start. I mean, just from your observation of what's going on, I would say the Saints probably are the most consistent. When I look at teams, I would say the Saints keeping the same, getting Drew Brees back was huge. Uh, Getting Taysom Hill back, and I do want to talk about Taysom Hill a little bit later on because I'm interested to know your thoughts on what's going on right now. But then you've got the Atlanta Falcons, and they've gotten rid of their running back. They've brought in Todd Gurley, but they pretty much got the same system. Tampa is a year removed from Bruce Arians, and they brought in Tom Brady, and so it's none of these teams, with the exception of maybe the Saints, and I would say offensively, the Atlanta Falcons are going to look the same as what you saw when the season ended last year. So it's going to be intriguing to see how these teams go.
Yeah, you're right, and I've taken a lot of flack from my followers on Twitter and throughout social media because I've gone on record as saying how much I like what the Saints did for themselves in free agency, and the reason that is because most of their activity was based off keeping their own core intact, and
Huge.
yeah, you look, if you ignore for a second, the Saints re-signed this player and they re-signed that player, and you just look at the names. You look at if I told you that my team brought in Drew Brees, Andrus Peat, Malcolm Jenkins, David Onyemata this offseason, among other players, you're going to say that my team had a pretty good haul. I think NFL fans in general, and I see it through every team, they like to see new players brought in and it adds a certain level of excitement, and I get that. But this is a Saints team that went 13-3 over the previous two seasons, 11-5 before that, and three straight division titles. That's a pretty darn talented team that's doing this.
Right.
So they were smart in trying to keep as much of their core intact as they could, and like you and I just talked about, that keeps the continuity of Sean Payton's system together as well, because these players know each other. Even Malcolm Jenkins, who they signed from the Philadelphia Eagles, he started his career with the New Orleans Saints with Sean Payton as head coach and with Dennis Allen as one of the defensive coaches. So there's a lot to be said with what they're doing and the continuity going forward.
So I know that they brought in a wide receiver, and that was a huge wide receiver. Can you tell us a little bit about what were your thoughts on that when you saw that move? Because I can tell you, with Mickey Loomis, it doesn't matter about the cap, that's one thing that I've pretty much determined. Just follow as I followed him. Cap room doesn't matter. He's gonna find a way to make things work, and he has continuously found a way to make things work. So, just getting more weapons for Drew Brees, I think this is a huge push for your team to try to get over that last hurdle.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the wide receiver you're talking about that the Saints brought in, of course, is Emmanuel Sanders. I've loved Emmanuel Sanders ever since his rookie year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big fan of him through the Steelers and Denver Broncos after that. A lot of people felt like the Saints were trying to work out a deal at the trade deadline with the Denver Broncos last year to get Sanders, but he instead ended up getting traded to the San Francisco 49ers instead. And Sanders showed us that he has quite a bit of football left. He is a savvy veteran, underrated deep speed, but runs those intermediate routes very precisely as well,
Yeah.
which of course fits right into Drew Brees' wheelhouse. So Sanders is either already 33 or will turn 33 soon, but the contract is for 2 years, and by signing him, they added a bona fide second, a number 2 wide receiver to Michael Thomas, which is probably the biggest thing that this team has lacked, not only last season, but the year before that. I still expect New Orleans to address the wide receiver spot in the draft, but now they're not necessarily forced to do so with their first round pick. They can take advantage of that receiver depth later in the draft if they choose to. While you have Sanders, and Sanders isn't a me first guy either. He
Yeah.
wasn't the number 1 target in Pittsburgh. He wasn't the number 1 target in
No,
Denver.
he wasn't.
He was a complimentary piece last year. So I think he comes in with just the right ego for this kind of system. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do in the Saints offense.
Yeah. Now, when you look at the draft, and you've been through quite a few of these, uh, are you more of a best player on the board, or this guy fits what we need right now? Or does it just kind of depend on where you are with the draft? What when you're looking at the draft board, and I know we're not, none of us are GMs, but as you're looking at the draft board and you're like, okay, this guy was supposed to be drafted number 5 or number 7 or something like that, and here he is, he's dropped down to us. Is that something that you go ahead and grab him, or do you go with somebody that's going to fit the system, somebody that would fill a need, or how do you look at the draft?
It's certainly a combination of them both, and I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think we're all wannabe GMs. We just don't get the salaries to do it, or the NFL monitor behind us. But ideally, you do want a combination of them both. You don't want to sit there as an NFL GM or coach and say, I need to have this position in this round. You of course identify your team needs going into the draft,
Uh-huh.
but you also realize that with free agency and things like that, that you can go best player available, and especially if a first round caliber talent drops to you potentially at rounds 2 or 3, you have to pull the trigger and make that work. And that's what the Saints have done a wonderful job of, I think, in the last few drafts. They've identified players that they want, and they'll aggressively go up and get them, regardless of whether it's a first round or like we saw with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year when they wheeled and dealed. Gardner-Johnson was projected to be a second-round pick by a lot of people, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. I had the Saints mock draft taking him with their second-round pick, and he fell to them at number 4. So if all your eggs are lined up as an NFL team the way you want them to be,
Mm-hmm.
you can identify. You go into each round, and you go into the draft in general with, of course, your big board, and with each round your positional needs, but you have multiple players graded overall grade and graded at that particular positional grade at each position, and it's a constant flow of moving parts. But that's one way that I think Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, and that scouting department of the Saints, has done such a wonderful job of the last couple of years. And as a result, we're coming into this year's draft, and I have no clue what the Saints are going to do.
Yeah, and I what we're talking about the draft. I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about the Bucks, and I don't know how much you followed. I don't know how much you follow what goes on in the NFC South. I know some people don't really follow it until you get closer to the draft or you get closer to the season, and then you try to figure out what's going on. I try to follow all the teams in the NFC South to some extent. The Saints, the Carolina Panthers. I really follow the Panthers, and you see the connection with Teddy Bridgewater going to Carolina. I try to follow as many teams as possible. What are your thoughts on possible needs? Having seen the Buccaneers twice a year, what are your thoughts on the needs for the Buccaneers as you're just an outsider looking in?
Well, with the Buccaneers, I love what they have on the defensive side of the ball. They have some young talent. I would expect to see Tampa Bay to address their secondary, possibly take advantage of what I think is a pretty good cornerback class depth-wise. But you also brought in a 40-plus, what's Tom Brady, 42, 43 years old?
40, something like that, yeah.
You're going to want to protect him.
Yeah.
He needs to be upright to go through his progressions. All quarterbacks do, but especially when you're talking about a 40-something-year-old quarterback that isn't exactly fleet-footed like Lamar Jackson or somebody like that.
Yeah.
You need to keep him upright. Tampa Bay likes their receivers, so it wouldn't surprise me if they perhaps brought a receiver or somebody in deeper into the draft. But their skill position outside, tight end, wide receiver, they're set there. You need a running back, though. And although Ronald Jones showed us quite a bit, I think, with the Bucs last year, it wouldn't surprise me to see Tampa Bay dip their foot into the running back pool in this draft as well. Tom Brady is no longer a 5,000 yard passer, that he once was earlier in his career. My opinion, he needs more of a balanced offensive attack. So you have to be able to run the ball, control the line of scrimmage, keep him upright, and keep those defenses honest against Brady, so those receivers that you have can thrive.
Yeah. And, I think the general consensus in Tampa is that offensive line. There are, there are just some spots in there. You've got some good players, along the offensive line, but there are places where you can always upgrade. The Buccaneers have not always been the team that's addressed the trenches on a consistent basis, and that kind of shows itself right now. Throughout the year, throughout the years, whether it's been coaching changes and I don't like this, these guys in this system, and you start all over from scratch. But there have been a number of different reasons why the trenches have not been addressed the way they should have been. So it's going to be, to me, that's something that I would be looking at is offensive line as well. So
and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, please.
No, you hit the nail right on the head, and I think the Saints going back to New Orleans. I think that they have done a great job of building up both their offense and defensive lines over the last couple of years. And as Drew Brees has gotten older, he's still a prolific quarterback, but he's not a 5,000 yard passer anymore either. At least like he was earlier in the career. So the Saints have been accused. And I say that tongue in cheek, of playing bully ball against their opponents. And what that means, of course, it's a little bit of an old school mentality, and that you're controlling both sides of the line of scrimmage, which means that you can put pressure on the opposing passer. You can kind of impose your will on opposing defenses from the offensive side if you can run the ball at will and protect your quarterback, opening up that play action passing attack.
Yeah, I tell you, Alvin Kamara he's been huge for your team. Even with the loss of Ingram, just what he's been able to do has been nothing short of outstanding. I will say this, having watched the Bucs versus the Saints, I like what the defensive line has been able to do against the run last year. It was very impressive, and that's something that I would hope to see more of this year. I think with the re-signing of Shaq Barrett, bringing back Ndamukong Suh, you have Vita Vea, who's going into another year, and he's continuously getting better. It's exciting to see, like you mentioned earlier, what that defensive line is going to do. And I guess when we talk about Alvin Kamara, I kind of want to get to the big question: what's going on with Alvin Kamara? What's getting ready to? What do you think's going to happen, or what's going to happen? What are they saying over in Saints Nation?
As far as what's coming out of the team and out of Kamara's camp, both sides are being pretty tight-lipped. And I got crucified a little bit for an article the other day. From SI. I put out some potential early round targets at running back if the Saints were to make the decision either to A, move on from Alvin Kamara, or B, make the internal decision, hey, we're not going to be able to sign this guy after the season because his current situation is he will be a free agent at the end of the 2020 season.
And that's unrestricted, right?
That is correct, yeah. Okay. And Kamara has been pretty open about the fact that he wants a contract now. Now, where it starts to get a little bit murky is he has hinted from his own Twitter account at a holdout, but he hasn't come right out and said it. Kamara changed agents about a month or maybe a couple months ago, which is usually not a great sign when you're heading into a negotiation period with a player. But the Saints have, from their side, the Saints have made no, at least public account of we're putting Alvin Kamara on the trade market. One of the reasons for my article is it's not unprecedented for the New Orleans Saints to move on from a star offensive player. We've seen it in recent years with Jimmy Graham, Kenny Stills, and Brandon Cooks when they're in precisely this type of contract situation. And even
I
though the
know.
Saints have not said we're looking to move Kamara, and Kamara himself has not said, I want out of New Orleans. In fact, he said just the opposite, that I love it in New Orleans and I love my teammates. The fact that Christian McCaffrey just re-signed a
Yes,
big,
I was
big
gonna.
deal. And Kamara and his people, as well as the rest of the running backs throughout the league, you better believe that they're watching that. And I don't know that Kamara is going to be asking for an average of $16 million a year. I expect him to be asking for 13 to 14, maybe $15 million a year. And the Saints have a lot of big contract decisions other than
Yeah.
just Alvin. Next year alone, they have Sheldon Rankins, Demario Davis, Marcus Williams in the secondary, Alex Anzalone. A year after that, coming off of their fifth-year rookie option that just got picked up, they have Marshawn Lattimore and
Lattimore.
Ryan
Yeah.
Ramchick. These are franchise-type players, and you're right. Mickey Loomis has done a spectacular job of manipulating the salary cap, but you can only stretch a rubber band for so long before
Yeah.
it breaks. So while I love Alvin Kamara as a player, and I love him as a person, he's a fun kid. He loves to have fun on a football field, and there's not too many running backs throughout the NFL that has a better skill set as a pass receiver or a running back that Kamara does. I would love to see him as a New Orleans Saint for long term. Or another 3 to 4 year deal on the horizon, but I don't know if that's in the cards. Have I heard anything personally? No. I'm just playing the odds and looking at how this franchise, the Saints, have handled this type of situation in recent past.
Wow, that's crazy. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. There are some good running backs. This is a very deep running back draft here. I mean, I could
Mm-hmm.
think of players like Michael Pittman Jr. As a potential player that you could bring in and possibly have somebody to replace. No, I wouldn't say replace him, but have somebody come in to actually play in that position as well. So this is one of the names that pops up. I kind of want to get back. I kind of want to get back to talking about the quarterback, because that's been to me what this off season's been about. When you talk about Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, just and some of these so many other quarterbacks that I know I'm missing. With Teddy Bridgewater going to Carolina, and the Carolina Panthers, hey, this is our franchise quarterback, and this is who we're going with. The New Orleans Saints were kind of looking at, basically they brought back Drew Brees, and then Taysom Hill was signed. Well, not signed, but he was like, was that a first round? Was it like a first round tender? Is that what they
Yeah.
put on Taysom? And he hasn't signed it yet. So what are the indicators for that right there? I mean, I would have think he can't do anything unless he signs it, and his other option is to sit out this season. He's 29 years old. I don't think that would be a good idea for him, because he's still unproven to a lot of other teams as a viable quarterback. I think he fits with the Saints offense. He's an offensive weapon when they bring him on. I mean, he's a defensive coordinator nightmare for a mini, but
Yeah.
I just don't see him. I mean, I see him as a quarterback. He can throw the ball, but I just can't see him consistently as a starting quarterback. I see him fitting a system and working and benefiting from what Sean Payton's putting out there. But, outside of that, I just don't know.
Well, and you brought up so many questions right there. First, as far as Taysom's contract situation, the deadline has passed that at least I think it has, where other NFL teams can offer a restricted free agent a contract. And what the Saints did coming into free agency, they did tender Taysom Hill with a first round tender, which meant that if another team offered him a contract, the Saints, I believe, would have had 1 week to match it. or else receive a first-round draft pick in return for Taysom Hill's services and for losing him. But no other team. And I think that the Saints did that to kind of gauge Taysom's value through. Yep, exactly. To gauge Taysom's value throughout the league. It was a win-win situation for them. The fact that Taysom did not sign his contract yet, I'm not worried about. You're right. He doesn't really have the only two options he has now are to hold out and not play for anybody, or to sign his 1-year tender with the Saints, which is I think for $2.5 million, play out the season and become unrestricted free agent after the regular season. Now, that deals with the contract situation. As far as Taysom Hill's positional value, do I think he's an NFL caliber quarterback? Absolutely not. And I think that Sean Payton was engaging in a little bit of subterfuge and saying that comparing Taysom Hill to Steve Young and all but guaranteeing that Taysom will be Drew Brees' successor. We shall see. But I think that if Sean really felt that way, Taysom Hill would have already been signed to a long-term deal.
Yeah, most definitely.
With escalating value as the contract goes on with each passing year. In other words, after Drew Brees' contract is off the books, Taysom Hill gets paid like a franchise quarterback. The fact that we have not seen that happen, and for all we know, the Saints front office and Taysom could be negotiating that kind of thing behind closed doors. I don't see it happening.
I don't either.
Still see the Saints drafting Drew. I don't think Drew Brees' successor is currently in the NFL. I didn't feel that way with Teddy Bridgewater as the backup. I think that was just a potential bridge and security blanket situation. But I think that Drew Brees' successor will be drafted either this year or more likely, in my opinion, next year. Taysom will be, if he's still a Saint beyond this year, Taysom will be given the opportunity to win the job. Taysom is going to receive a lot of reps this preseason, assuming it goes forward as planned at quarterback, because we already know what Hill can do as a as a Swiss Army knife of an offensive weapon, which is where I believe his greatest effectiveness lies, not only with the Saints, but if he were to go somewhere else, to use him as almost a gadget quarterback and kind of a luxury weapon. And a trick play artist, but I don't believe
he's that wrinkle in the offense that they talk about.
Exactly. But my gut feeling is Sean Payton is and always has had his eye elsewhere for Drew Brees' successor.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they didn't try to get Lamar Jackson. I was just when that draft happened, I just knew that the Saints. I was like, I was dreading it too. I was like, man, the Saints are going to get Lamar Jackson. They're going to pick him up, and that's going to be it. And I'm just going to be stressed out every Sunday now. But fortunately, it didn't work like that. And you never know. Again, with the talent evaluation that they've had, I would say from 2016 to the present, they've set themselves up pretty good to stay consistently competitive, and that's pretty important right there. And we have the C3 podcast on here in the chat, and they were saying if Tua slips out of the top 5, do the Saints jump up for him? And imagine going from Brees to Tua. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely, it's a possibility, and certainly a dream scenario. I think that it would cost a little bit too much for New Orleans to get into the top 5, maybe even to get into the top 10. But if Tua starts to slip a little bit, and basically if he gets past the Miami Dolphins and the San Diego, and yeah, I know I said it, San Diego Chargers.
Me too. I say it all the time.
We could start to see Tua tumble for a couple picks if nobody makes a move up. And that's where the New Orleans Saints and certainly the New England Patriots are both in play for big moves up at 9, 10, where the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cleveland Browns sit. Tua gets to be that range. I don't foresee him getting very far past that because Jacksonville and Cleveland are sitting at prime positions. New Orleans, Peyton and Mickey Loomis have shown zero hesitation to pull a trigger and go get the guy that they want. And I don't foresee it. I don't see a scenario where they'll move way up to get a guy like Jordan Love. Although if Love is sitting there at the 24th pick where they are, they'd consider him there. The only guy that they would move up to get on a slim chance at a Justin Herbert or at Tua Falls, that's where you're going to see New Orleans and New England and a couple other teams burning up the phone lines for those guys sitting at 9, 10, 12.
Yep, there you go. Another question for you. What do you think about the Wonderlic score? I hate the Wonderlic score. You guys, I took the mock test. I scored a 35, and I'm not a quarterback. I'm not a football player. But I scored a 35 on it. So to me, that tells me that the Wonderlic score is useless. Personally, I know to me it's antiquated. I don't even know why it's there. And if a clown like me can get 35, I mean it's to me it's useless.
Well, first of all, don't sell yourself short, Gene. You might want to send that Wonderlic score to Bruce Arians and Sean Payton. Those guys are going to be looking for quarterbacks in the next couple of years. Uh, but yeah, I agree with you. It's just like the underwear Olympics that the NFL scouting combine has become.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff. And listen, I'm a track guy myself, so I do
Yeah.
love that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, can the guy play football?
Yeah.
Tua wouldn't be able to play for Nick Saban if he was dumb. It's that simple. Um, Alabama, Alabama, and more recent seasons with Tua, and before that, Jalen Hurts has had a more intricate offensive system. And if you have a guy behind center that has a low football IQ and can't dissect defenses and move your offensive personnel around and isn't smart enough to go through his reads, that's the kind of guy that you're looking for. Can he make plays on film? Can he go down to his second and third and fourth reads with patience, rather than panic? And that has nothing to do with the test that you take when somebody's starting pistol or starting whistle goes off. That has nothing to do with the test you take in a classroom where you're filling out and checking little boxes. That's great. That's being a football player.
Yeah. I've taught third graders, and I can tell you what, testing is the most annoying thing that there is. I don't think it's fair if you have one test and you're spreading it out to everybody and everybody's supposed to do well at it. I think that's a joke. Again, like what was it, Jerry Judy? I think he got like an 8 on the Wonderlic. I don't even think the guy even tried. To be honest, I don't think he tried. And that's just how much it meant to him, because he knows that eventually he's going to get paid if he gets to go out there and show what he can do. He's going to get paid. Again, I think
he can catch a football, yeah, and he can run fast and make plays. Who cares what he does in the classroom?
Exactly. That's what it all comes down to. Mo Claiborne, Maurice Claiborne scored a 4, I think. These guys aren't. I don't think they're trying, to be honest. So I don't know, man. Again, that the whole score thing is a joke to me. I don't take it seriously. I mean, if you look at my Twitter handle, I say I scored a 35 on the Wonderlic, and but it doesn't mean anything. So there's
I think you need to screenshot that and send it to Coach Arian and Coach Payton, because you never know. But you're right. If I'm a coach, and I like to stop watching the track stuff. More than anybody. My entire life has been track and field for the most part. But if I'm a football coach, can my guy play football? Can the guy that I want play football and progress in my system and do well in my system? That's what matters to me.
Yeah. Now let me ask you a question. Because we talked about the underwear Olympics, as you called it, which I like that. Don't most of these GMs have an idea of already going into this who they are already looking at getting? Don't these guys look at, because tape don't lie. And I don't know. I have really never gotten into it, because I've always believed that these guys have sent scouts out. You've got scouts going to different games. They've looked for behaviors, and with college players, you can't look for that big play all the time. You look for behaviors or inconsistencies and that kind of thing when you're deciding what player you're going to bring to your team. And then, I don't know. I think basically the combine to me is a get together for the owners and and scouts, but that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, you get to see somebody run a 40, and it doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, in a case in point, Jameis Winston. I don't know how many times Jameis Winston has run out of the pocket, and the guy, I think he ran like a 5 something in the 40. And to me, I'm like, okay. I mean, if I were basing everything I know on Jameis Winston's combines, I would have never expected him to be able to run out of the pocket and do what he does. So I love the physical, lifting weights, seeing how high you can jump, and all the measurements and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys, they don't do good in pro days. They don't do good, possibly in the combine, and they turn out to be amazing. So we've seen that more times than not.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I tell you one way, and the major way, that the combine and these pro days are important to NFL teams and prospects. And it has nothing to do with 40 times or bench presses or anything else. It's the interviews. We have seen in recent years, especially, we have seen some high profile guys, sit out workouts, either all or portions of some, but they still go to the combines. That's when your coaches get a chance to meet with the potential draft pick, talk to them, get a feel. Basically, it's a job interview.
Right.
And a little bit beyond that, you also get to see how this prospect mentally and emotionally handles the pressure of something like an NFL combine. Outside of that, they don't care what their 40 time is. They don't care how much they bench press, how high they jump, how far they jump. The 3-cone drill and the 20-yard shuttle, that tells you a little bit about them as a football player then, because you're showing a lot of short area quickness and everything like that. But outside of that, at least coaches, I don't know about GMs, and I certainly don't know about owners, but coaches look forward to the interview process with the players. That's why it's important.
Yeah, most definitely. Definitely. I totally agree with that. Once again, folks, if you're just joining us, I've got Bob Rose on. We're talking a little New Orleans Saints. I'm kind of starting my tour of the NFC South. Great friend. I've gotten to work with him on the C3 podcast when they do their NFC South show, which if C3 is still listening, I really want to bring that back, because Southbound and Down, it really needs to make a comeback. I loved, talking football with the, talking NFC South football. So hint, if you guys are thinking about bringing that back, I'm all on board.
Oh, and you got a friend from New Orleans Saints camp too, where we like to coach each other in good fun, but we all follow each other's work. And you're right, we've all become good friends. And I've gotten messages when the Saints have suffered a tough loss. I've gotten messages from you and the C3 guys. Hey, you doing all right? And that kind of friendship and mutual respect is definitely appreciated.
Oh, he said, yeah, tell Bob to come with you.
I'm on board.
Hey, that's like one of my favorites is Who Dat Holly. She's basically been kicked off of Twitter. I don't know how many times. She's gone toe to toe with Roger Goodell and officiating crews, and is just, I have to like dial her back and reel her in, because she gets way into it. But I totally get that. With the officials, and I know we're going to wrap this up, because I told you 15 minutes, but we've gone a little bit longer, and I appreciate you being able to stay on. What are your thoughts on the officiating? I mean, we got to see the XFL, and I loved the transparency of the officiating in the XFL. I actually could walk away from, I watched almost every game with the exception of maybe 3, and the officiating was good. And when the officiating was bad, they acknowledged it was bad and removed the guy that messed everything up. So to me, that is a blueprint for making this better. But there's just no transparency with the NFL officiating. And could you imagine what the conversation was from the booth to the field on that interception or that pass interference call? What would that have been like? It's just I think when people are like criticizing other teams, or you should have done this, my thing is, this could easily be our team, or this could easily be my team. So, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. And, it's dangerous to ask a Saints fan about officiating. It's like batting the horn that's messing around. But
I
the
carefully thought
stuff
that question out.
the stuff that's happened to that team aside, the specific things, in a general way, I agree with you. I love what the XFL did. And that is the biggest thing that the NFL and NFL officiating crew, and it trickles uphill all the way up to King Goodell at the top.
Yeah.
It's lack of accountability. It has made the game far less watchable
Yeah.
because you're watching your team, you're watching your guys, and the people that you root for make a big play, and instead of jumping up and down like a fan likes to do, you have to hold your celebration and pause and look at the bottom of the TV screen and see if you see yellow
Right.
flag come across, and let players play.
Yeah.
Look, officials are going to make mistakes. I acknowledge that. As long as they're human mistakes, and not with an underlying air of corruption, and I'll bite my tongue on that one.
I'll go ahead and say it. Yeah, there's an underlying air of corruption. I don't have any skin in the game. I'll say that because I've seen some head scratching officiating, and I'm just like, wait a minute, huh? And that's about all I can really get out of it. So I don't,
Yeah,
again, and that's why I brought it up, because I like the fact that you have transparency. You can hear what the guy in the booth who's looking at everything is saying to the guy on the field.
mm-hmm.
That needs to be implemented. It needs to be, and it will restore so much faith in the game that's been lost because of what's been happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're not necessarily saying that these guys aren't allowed to make mistakes. If the players on the field are allowed to make mistakes, the guys, the men, the humans officiating are certainly allowed to make them too. But you fix the error. You try your best not to repeat it going forward. And
now see, I'm going to hold. Yeah, I know you got to be careful. You're walking a fine line here, but there have been plays. I understand if a running back runs through the middle, big hole, and are breaking coverage, and he runs for a touchdown, he wins the game. I hate the fact that a referee who has no input other than trying to officiate the game can affect the direction of a game. And
Yep.
that and when I know a referee by name, when I know officiating crews by name, they're too involved in the game.
Thank you. Yes. And the NFC Championship game, the phantom pass interference between the Rams and the Saints, that was a hell of a game between two extremely talented teams. And in interviews since that game, I get asked about officiating, and I understand why. And I've said it ever since the day after the game. It's just a shame. And of course, I'm upset that the Saints lost. I'm angry at the reason why, and it's a shame that the questions have to center around that kind of thing rather than these were just two very good teams playing a very good, hard-fought football game against each other, and we wind up talking about officiating.
Yeah.
And that's just on the grandest scale. There are countless regular season contests that you could say the same exact thing about. And it's the same players, same teams, and same franchises more often than not benefiting time and time again. And I won't go any further about my corruption thing.
Yeah, because there have been Bucs games, and I've seen holding on both sides, and I only see the Bucs getting called on holding calls. And it blows my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw this. There was a pass interference, and there was a blatant push in the back. Pass interference call wasn't called, but on the Bucs side, it was called. And I'm just looking at this, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It even if it wasn't the Bucs, I pay close attention just in general to the NFL, and that's one of the most frustrating things about it. So. Yeah, thank you. I know you've gone as far as you can go. I think we can go a different direction and kind of get you out of there.
But facial expressions often give me away. I realize.
Yeah, there you go. So one thing I want to do before we leave, every guest that I have on, I got to try this or I do this, and I do put people on the hot seat. So I've got like 10 questions, and I'll give you a minute to answer them. I normally do. I love this. I'm good at it. They have a big mouth or whatever. But I was actually hoping, I'm getting my stopwatch here together. And what it is, it's questions about the NFL and maybe the NFC South. Because it's you and you're new here, I didn't come with any hard questions really. And there may be a few questions about around the NFL, but for the most part, it is the NFC South. And what I normally do is start with the first question I'll ask you, and then I will let you, I'll just come in with the next question after you answer it. So a lot of these are buy or sell, boom or bust. You like it or don't like it. No, not doesn't require a lot of thought, but that quick answer. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And first question: Drew Brees, greatest free agent acquisition for the New Orleans Saints, buy or sell?
Buy. I don't think there's any doubt.
Atlanta Falcons are the Saints' greatest rival, buy or sell?
Buy.
Talent-wise, 2017 was the greatest draft in Saints history, buy or sell?
I'll buy that one.
Kansas City Chiefs will get back to the Super Bowl this year, buy or sell?
Sell.
The Cleveland Browns will get to the playoffs, buy or sell?
Wow. I'm going to sell it.
All right. Bill O'Brien, smart coach, buy or sell?
Sell.
Tom Brady will help the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, buy or sell?
Sell.
Todd Gurley, Atlanta Falcons, boom or bust?
Bust.
Teddy Bridgewater will lead the Carolina Panthers to the playoffs, buy or sell?
Eventually, but not this year, so I'll sell.
Mickey Loomis belongs in the Saints Ring of Honor, buy or sell?
Oh, buy.
All right. Well, 9 seconds over, but that was good. You got all your answers out there, and that's what we do. It's get people in the hot seat. Yeah, I try to be as easy as possible here. So again, this is Bob Rose. Bob, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you on Twitter or your social media accounts. Guys, if you get a chance to follow him, his articles are really good. If you want to stay in touch with what's going on in the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints, he's your guy. Definitely give him a follow and check out his articles. He does great work.
Gene, I appreciate those kind words and definitely appreciate the opportunity to come on with you tonight. Hopefully we can do it again. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're definitely you're a friend of the show now. When we will get together, and as this quarantine situation continues to go, we'll have time to get on again. So tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
And eventually I'm going to get a haircut too, I promise. I'm about a month overdue. But I can be followed on Twitter at BobbyR2613 and on Facebook as well, just under Bob Rose. And we also have our own Facebook page. It's the Bayou Blitz Facebook page. And obviously it's 99% New Orleans Saints related. But we channel in a lot of NFC South stuff as well too. And I post all of my articles not only on my own personal pages, but on the Saints News Network and SI.com. So if you go to SI.com, you can follow me on there under the Saints page. And I also, all 32 teams have their own Maven site on SI.com too. It's obviously a good source of information. A lot of fun to write for as well.
All right. And again, thank you so much for coming on. For me, I want to thank you for coming on. We're going to do more with the NFC South. I am going to work with C3 Podcast to see if we can bring South Mountain down back. And, I think it's long overdue. I would love to be able to interact with some of you guys, even Atlanta Falcons, would love to, talk with some of them. And by the way, I do follow you on Facebook only because when you guys beat Atlanta, I do like going in there and reading some of the comments. So that's that's how much I dislike them. But again, I enjoy, I enjoy the content. Made a lot of good friends out of there as well. So, this is that time of the year where we can all get together and hang out and talk football. So there we go. But that's pretty much it for me. I will be on tomorrow with Evan Winter from Bucks Nation. And we'll be going a little bit more. We'll talk more about the draft, and as we get closer to all that, we will kind of wrap up some loose ends and come up with our ideas of who we want to see. But again, Bob, thank you so much for coming on. You are appreciated, my friend. And I know that. Oh, and you have a podcast as well, right?
Yes, sir. Bayou Blitz. We used to go live. We tape every Wednesday evening. Last week we had a great interview with Delvin Bro. We've been having some technical difficulties, so it actually hasn't posted yet. And we're looking forward to getting back to the Bayou Blitz podcast with a little bit more consistency. But my co-host, my boss at the Saints News Network, and co-host Kyle Mosley and I have a blast doing that also.
Yeah, I would love to come on and talk with you guys. So we'll make it happen at some point. But anyway, yep. That's pretty much it for me. I want to thank everybody, and Bob, thank you so much. And we are out of here.